All right, Governor Gavin Newsom is facing backlash from his own party after making comments on his new podcast about transgender student athletes. ABC10's Becca Hobbecker joins us in studio now to break down exactly what he said. Becca.
Alex, Governor Newsom, a longtime champion of LGBTQ rights, called transgender athletes on girls' and women's sports teams unfair. He made those comments on the premiere episode of his new podcast, which launched today, and lawmakers and activists are now reacting.
That's my humble opinion.
In the first episode of his new podcast called This is Gavin Newsom, the governor spoke with conservative activist, author, and media personality Charlie Kirk.
It's easy to just call it kind of a book ban.
Kirk brought up the topic of trans athletes in high school girls' sports and asked the governor if he'd do anything about it.
Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that.
Newsom then added more context to his position.
There's also a humility and a grace that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand.
State lawmakers on both sides of the aisle tell us they're surprised by Newsom's remarks.
We've been saying this for years, and I'm stunned today he's actually admitted it. But I just don't know if it's genuine or not, because he's not just some political commentator, he's the governor. So he actually has the ability to change this policy, and I don't think he's going to change the policy.
Republican Assemblymember Bill Asaley points to a bill he introduced, which would require students to play on sports teams and use bathrooms consistent with their sex assigned at birth. He thinks Newsom's podcast comments won't translate into action.
He could issue an executive order right now to end this policy in California, but he's not going to do it.
Democrats and LGBTQ advocates oppose Newsom's stance.
We, Equality California, are deeply disappointed and angered by the governor's comments. Transgender youth, like all youth, as we said many times, deserve dignity, respect, and the opportunity to participate in sports without fear of discrimination.
The California Legislative LGBTQ Caucus issued a statement saying, in part, sometimes Gavin Newsom goes for the profile and courage, sometimes not. We woke up profoundly sickened and frustrated by these remarks. All students deserve the academic and health benefits of sports activity, and until Donald Trump began obsessing about it, playing on a team consistent with one's gender has not been a problem since the standard was passed in 2013. They're referring to a California law that allows student athletes to play on a sports team consistent with their gender identity. The governor's office tells ABC10 in California's 5.8 million student K-12 public school system, the number of transgender student athletes is estimated to be in the single digits. And the NCAA's president has said fewer than 10 college athletes nationwide are believed to be openly transgender.
Some critics have said today Newsom's moderating of his stance adds fuel to the speculation of his eventual possible run for president. We reached out to the governor's office for response to the backlash. A spokesperson directed us back to the governor's comments on the podcast and pointed to his years-long record of protecting and expanding rights and protections for the LGBTQ community.